dragging everybody down. That's what Edmonds do.
Good morning. My name is Devin. Welcome to the first ever State of the ERDC address. This morning, Dr. Holland is going to be talking about where we are as an organization and how to position ourselves for success in the future. There will be a question and answer portion after the talk. You may text your questions to 601-456-0421. That includes the people in the room. You may also email your questions to erdic-cco@usastatearmy.mil. And if you're watching it on YouTube, you can also post your questions in the comment section below the video. I'd like to thank ITL for hosting and also providing the capability for us to stream it to all of our remote locations and to your desktops. If we don't have an opportunity to address your question, we'll do so after the event and post all relevant information, including the video, on our ERDC intranet sites. You'll see some email distributions about that. Without further ado, your ERDC Director, Dr. Jeff Holland.
Yay! Several minutes. All right, so I do not know if those in the room are actually allowed to pose questions today. Are they? Can they do that? Can they like just talk? They cannot, can they? You must text. You apparently can hold up cigarette lighters and yell "free bird." For those of you that are not old enough to know what that means, you can Google that while you're sitting here. That'll work out well for you. We're going to talk for the next few minutes about where the ERDC is going. In order to understand where the ERDC is going, you have to understand where the ERDC is. One of the things that we all understand is that in order to read a map, you have to understand where you are on the map. And that for all the capabilities that we have to use GPS, if we don't understand where we are, it doesn't do us a whole lot of good. In order to understand where we are, we have to understand who we are. And that's actually where we're going to start. There are very few State of the Anything addresses that actually start by talking about who we are. This organization must understand who it is. I think you understand who we are, but I'm not sure anybody's ever sat down with you and actually said, these are the fundamental tenets of this organization. Okay, because the fundamental aspects, the basic character of this organization sets the direction of where it goes more than anything. Okay, the business that we go after, the things that we try to do are a function of who we are more than any single thing. And if we understand who we are, that will take care of the idea of where we're going. Now, for those of you that are not in the room, I will tell you this. There's this nice little monitor in the back that in theory anybody with 20/20 vision can read. Okay, that monitor needs to be about 14 feet closer to me. I need to be 14 feet closer to it, or it needs to be like 284 font, one of the two. Okay, so ever so often, camera people, turn away from me while my derriere turns towards you, and I look to see what I'm going to say next. All right. This organization is made up of a really good mix of direct and reimbursable work. Direct, for my lexicon, is this. It's money that we get from the Corps of Engineers headquarters, Civil Works money for the most part, and money that we get from the Army's Assistant Secretary for Acquisition, Logistics, and Technology, ASALT. Okay, that's my definition of direct. We get a lot of other people's direct funded money, but those are the two things that go into direct. And you're going to see how much money we get in direct in a few minutes. Reimbursable is everything else. So we get a lot of money from the Office of Secretary of Defense and the organizations that are under that, OSD. We get a whole bunch of money from the Air Force. We get a lot of money from EPA, from Department of State, from lots of different folks. I'll show you the top 11 customers that we've had over the last 4 FYs in a second. Okay. That is all reimbursable money in our thinking. And here's the important facet of that. In order to keep that work, in order to keep repeat customer business, we have to do the work they ask us to do within the time frame that they ask us to do it, for the money that they ask us to do it with quality. Don Cullinan, who was the deputy director of this organization in a previous life, used to say that if you just do what you said you're going to do, you'll be in good shape. And for reimbursable work, it comes down to be just about that simple. Okay? If what we write down, I may have just tripped a few of you up. If what we actually write down and say to people we're going to do, if we actually do that within the time frame of what we say we're going to do for the cost that we say we're going to do it, then we will be fine. And when we don't, somebody gets a call. Now, notwithstanding the social networks that all of us own today, the social networks within our customer base have always existed. Okay, one aw crap really does wipe out a ton of attaboys. And when one customer, particularly in the Corps of Engineers or in the defense business, seems to find out that we're not producing the way that we should produce, that word gets out to the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. So what one of us does inside this organization impacts the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And that's why, whether we want to consider ourselves all cousins and one family or not, I can assure you we are one family. Because we will all sink or swim together in every sense of the word as it relates to business. Okay. We have to do quality work in this organization, not just pay salaries. Now, some of you may feel that you would be happy if you could just pay salaries. There's actually plenty of money across the ERDC at large. Okay. And if you don't have enough money inside your branch, I want you to tell Beth Fleming. I don't really want you to tell me, but Beth just was close to me here, and if you tell Dr. Pittman, he'll feel so bad, he'll probably try to fix it. Okay? But we've got a lot of money. So you may not feel like you have enough money, but we got money running out our ears. Now, some of you will feel, no, we don't. And maybe down at the branch level, you can't see that. But we've got about $1 billion every year in total obligation authority in this organization, and that's a lot of money for us. Okay, the year that I came to work in 1841, we had, actually in 1979, when I came to work on September the 4th, that year the Waterways Experiment Station had $68 million of total obligation authority. And even with adjusted for inflation, we're still many times over larger than we were then. And we did very little military work in those days compared to what we do today. Okay. If we want to keep work, we have to keep quality work. If we want to keep people, we must keep quality work. The thing that keeps people here, and this is told to us over and over and over again, is that people stay here because they love the quality of the work they do, because it has impact, and because there's some sense of autonomy to the things that they get to do. And we understand that that is true. We all want to make a difference in the things that we do. Just getting paid is not enough. Getting paid and making a difference is what matters in this organization. We can pay salaries 100,000 different ways, and that's not good enough. Okay, now, we actually have a sense of being really smart people. The people in this room, are you smart? I saw 2 or 3 of you not nod. Some of you are actually nodding off already. Okay, this is not church. Some of you should not be counting the light bulbs up there. We've already had them counted. We know how many there are. I feel like I'm teaching my Sunday school class all of a sudden. Okay, and you guys wouldn't even be sitting in front if we hadn't put reserved on the. Yeah, I know. And you don't belong up here because you're not reserved in any sense of the word, right? All right. Okay, I was pointing to Dr. Fleming for those of you out in electron land. All right. We actually are really smart people. And the problems that we are facing, though, are problems for which we really don't know everything. So the idea of partnering is something that's very important to us. We have to pick our partners very well. We don't partner willy-nilly in any sense of the word. We partner very strategically, and the folks with whom we partner are designed and selected in such a way that we complement the capability that we have. We select them very carefully. Okay? We pick people who want to team, okay? Not people who want to view us as a funding source. And I cannot stress that enough to you, particularly the folks who are in middle management in the organization and above. Don't pick people who view you as a funding source. Pick people who want to build something with you. Whether they're academicians, whether they're industry folks, whether they're other government agencies, whether they're international partners. Pick people who want to build with you. There are really smart people out there whose egos will not allow them to partner with you, and there are brilliant people who are so smart that they do not have to be prima donnas. And they are so good at what they do that they're not worried about any sense of the aura they present. Rather, what they present is, I just want to do good work. And I want to work on big problems. And so back to this idea of the quality of the work, as long as we have really meaningful, tough problems to attack, people are drawn to that themselves, and that draws them to us, and us to the kind of people who want to work with them as a result. Now, we have some really smart competitors, and make no mistake about it, friends, they are smart people. And some of them are a whole lot better at marketing and business development than we are. And that's why we've got to get better at that. The Department of Energy National Laboratories are absolutely fabulous at marketing and business development, and they own some authorities that we do not own. They own the ability, for example, to openly lobby the Congress. They have what other people would call political action type organizations that sit in Washington, made up 3, 4, 5 people. We have the ability to see a lot of documents in-house because we're inside the fence as members of the Department of Defense. Okay, but the Department of Energy views the Department of Defense's mission set as its primary focal point, not energy. If you go out to the DOE laboratories and spend a lot of time, you would see that the defense mission is one of the primary mission spaces of the Department of Energy laboratories. Okay. There are several other facets of the Department of Defense laboratory system, such as the FFRDCs, the federally funded research and development centers, who actually are much more successful at getting funding for certain kinds of things, particularly for things like facilities, than the defense laboratories are as a whole. Lincoln Laboratories is much better at getting federal funding for facilities. They ask for and have the potential, this has not been approved yet, to get as many as $400 million from the Congress of the United States, or somebody's Congress. It might have been Guatemala, I don't know, but anyway, okay, as long as they get $400 million to improve and recapitalize their facilities while we get none. Okay? We're in a competitive environment. The missions that we do are things other people would be glad to do. Okay? We're not off on our little corner as a Corps of Engineer entity and nobody's looking. We're on a big screen. People have noticed for sure. And what keeps us ahead of them is that we do our research, we stay ahead of what other people are capable of doing, and we partner both in-house to build multidisciplinary teams and with strategic partners that allows us to put together teams to do multidisciplinary work in a way that nobody else in the world does. As long as we're able to do that, we're fine. Okay. Now, we have great people. You're great people. Okay. You are stronger together than you are by yourselves. If this starts to sound like I'm preaching to you, then open your Bibles to the 12th chapter of 1 Corinthians, and you will see the whole idea of being an eye and an ear and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we are stronger together than we are by ourselves. There honestly is no question that that's true. This row is stronger together than it is by itself. If I am ever together, I will be stronger together than I am by myself. I've just never been together for any period of time. Okay? And that's why I'm retiring, because I just can't get it together for long enough. I've tried for 37 and a half years. Okay? We have great people. Great facilities would help our great people do what they do. We do not have great facilities in a lot of cases. Our cold facilities at Krell need a lot of work. There are facilities on this campus that need work. We're trying to build buildings in places to make at least the quality of life facilities that we have better. We're building headquarters. We build every building that we think we have the chance to get funding for. And we still have lots of work to do on that. We're working on master planning. Our commander's leading the way on that. We'll have more to say about that as the fall turns into winter. We've got a lot more work to do on that, and how we get that funded is a big challenge, and I admit that to all of you. And we're going to have to be very clever and quite innovative about how we do that. And finally, we thrive on being entrepreneurial and on having autonomy. I think every one of you really enjoys the idea of having autonomy. In fact, if you could figure out some way to get like everybody above division chief to go away and leave you alone, that would really be okay, wouldn't it? This is where you're not actually supposed to be doing. Those of you that are watching on the live streaming, you can do this all you want to, but we are looking through your machines, through the cameras on your machines directly back at you and recording what you're doing as well. That's right. All right. We have to be entrepreneurial in the organization. Now, in order to do this, we have to have some things that are true about us, and this is always going to be true for this organization, but it needs to be recognized. First off, we have to be agile. And we have to be able to stream, we have to be able to surge, we have to be able to move from this point to this point. We don't necessarily change our tech base, but we have to change our focal point for what we're doing. Okay, we have examples of where we've done that, but we also have examples of where we wanted to continue to do the same thing for 25 or 30 years exactly the same way. That won't work now. Okay, it just simply won't work. What will work, though, is doing very high quality work on time, in budget, teaming together to do the work, and constantly delivering the way we say we're going to deliver. That works. Okay, and it delivers the opportunity to do meaningful work from repeat customers who will be more than happy to bring their money back to you if you believe in and take care of their projects just as well as they could possibly hope anybody would. We've got to be able to surge on human capital. We cannot do that well today, and it is very difficult to do with all federal employees, and it will always be difficult to do with all federal employees. We have to come up with a way to be able to handle that somewhat through contractors. We have to be able to do that through the use of temporary employees, through term employees, through the use of more IPAs, through a postdoctoral program that we control and that we can use at a moment's notice. We've been looking into this for about 6 months. We're going to bring this to some fruition before I leave in March, and then you all are going to figure out what to do with it, because you're going to need it. Because we're going to have to be able to go on a project, we're going to have to be able to raise up 50 to 100 people in certain professional areas, get those people, get them on board, tell them very honestly, this project is going to last for 2 to 3 years, and then the best of them we may decide to keep, and some of them we will not. We're going to have to stretch our tech base to keep our competitive advantage. The only thing that grows from laying on the couch and doing nothing is your waistline. The lab directors and the technical directors will tell you that every so many years, for at least the last 10 years, I have pushed very hard in the direct program to force the direct program to do something completely new. Doing something that looks like it's not even in the direction of what we have traditionally done. And the purpose of that, quite honestly, is to, yes, take care of customers, but mostly to get us to understand that we have got to stretch as a research organization. When a research organization gets comfortable, it gets lazy. When it gets lazy, it loses its advantage. When it loses its advantage, people that do commodity work can catch up with us, and when they can catch up with us, we're in danger. Okay? And that's not good for any of us. A very good way to take care of the future is to make sure that we're always at the future. Then nobody has to wonder if we're going to have work to do, because we're always at the pointy end of the spear as well as being behind it. Conversely, if we get to the point where we're just completely comfortable with where we are, then we will be fine for 10 years. And in 10 years' time, other people will have passed us by. And friends, if they ever pass us by, getting back ahead of them isn't done. Ever watched a race and watch somebody who's running and they slow down and somebody passes them, and then they get enough momentum going to catch back up? It's not done. There's a certain human nature to that. Like I said at the beginning, other people would be more than happy to do our work. If they ever beat us to our customers, they'll be happy to keep them. Okay. I've mentioned this idea of delivering on time and budget and with quality over and over and over, keeping our entrepreneurial spirit and preserving autonomy while taking care of the enterprise. The enterprise should be feeding and serving the organization. We've got to keep the enterprise going. The enterprise and its ability to build these teams is the essential competitive advantage that we own. When I go out, I sit on boards for the Department of Energy. I sit on boards at universities. I sit on a variety of boards. I don't see anybody who has the ability to bring teams together to attack problems the way that we're willing to do. That is our competitive advantage now and for the future. And finally, we got to learn all the time, and this learning happens throughout the organization. It does not happen at the GS 12, 13, 14 level, at the DB 2, 3, 4, 5 level. It happens everywhere. It happens with the lab directors. It happens everywhere, all the time. We keep learning. We don't ever get comfortable with what we know. Next slide. Now, this is our program right now. We're averaging about $1 billion a year in total obligation authority. TOA is always an odd thing because it sounds like we can spend all that money, and in reality we can, but it includes the departmentals, the G&A accounts and things like that. Okay, but it's all real money. It all spends, and in some of our locations, small towns that they are. I mean, for example, for those of you that don't spend time here in Vicksburg, I've always wondered if here in Vicksburg, if you could go into the Walmart and actually offer them a MIPR if they would take it. Because, I mean, you know, so much Corps of Engineers stuff here in this city, you kind of get the feeling that you could literally spend currency here in the city. There was a time when I first came to work here many, many years ago when every bank in the town had a Skillcraft pen in it. For all you folks that have been around for a long time, the old government pens were Skillcraft pens. They said U.S. government on one side and Skillcraft on the other. The reason we don't have any more of them is because we left them all everywhere in the city along during the years. There were probably 10, 12,000 of them that have been lost in this town alone. I don't know what that cost us, but that was undoubtedly part of our overhead at one time. You see that we're about 35% direct. We're actually growing in our direct funding, and then again, direct is money from Corps of Engineer headquarters, mostly for civil works R&D, but a few other things that come on something called a funding authorization document. So if you ever hear the term FAD, that's what that means. Now that you know what it means, you still don't have the slightest idea what that means, but at least you've learned a new acronym today, and I'm proud for all of us. Okay. The reason I'm not going to tell you what it means is because I don't know any more than that either, and so I have to stop at this point. Okay. The money that we get that's direct from the military side, again, is the money that comes from ASALT. All right. The rest of the money is reimbursable. And so we're still basically a reimbursable organization. To contrast that with the Army Research Laboratory, the Army Research Lab is probably about 50-50, maybe a little bit more on the side of direct. Some of the Army laboratories are even more toward direct, and several of the Army laboratories are almost exclusively reimbursable. Okay. The Edgewood Chemical and Biological Command, ECBC, is almost exclusively reimbursable, what it does. And so the Army labs are up and down in that chain. The Naval Research Laboratory is something called working capital. It has about the same level of funding that we do, maybe a little bit more. The Air Force Research Laboratory has about $4 billion. Contrary to what you may have read, those of you from Vicksburg in the newspaper, where the mayor said that they had $400 billion, they don't. No, well, hopefully he didn't say 400 trillion. But if they had 400 billion, they'd have most of the defense budget. They have 4 billion, but they have all of the acquisition money, all the contracting money that the entire Air Force puts out for small business and things like that. So they have a lot of things that go through them that are not related to science and technology per se. Okay. You can see the distribution of in-house and out-house for the last several years. And this is important to what we do, okay? You see how we have outsourced somewhere around 60% for many, many, many years. I see every piece of what goes out the door that's over $100,000. There are many of those pieces of work that we could do. So I'm pushing your lab directors who are pushing you to hire people, because we're about to go through another wave of attrition through retirements, and the time to hire is while you have a lot of money. We did this in 2003 through 2007. We're trying to do this now by hiring 800 people from FY16 to FY20. That's 800 scientists and engineers, excuse me. That's not 800 total people. That's just the E&S community. Okay. That's to cover our attrition and actually grow the organization by 200 or 300 scientists and engineers during that time period. Even if we don't grow at all in the organization, we can just go into the money that we send out the door and keep some of what we send out the door, and instead of managing it, we can do it. Okay. 50-50 would be about the right amount for in-house, out-house for the organization, because we still send some things out the door that represent CORE, core competency for this organization. Next slide. These are the top customers. If this is tough to read, you've got all the different agencies of the Office of the Secretary of Defense. OSD, for example, the Defense Threat Reduction Agency is one of those organizations. Been with us in many of its instantiations when it was the Defense Nuclear Agency and other names for many years. Long-term customer, great relationship with that organization for a long period of time. We've got the Army, the Air Force, show you some funding from that. We do airfields and pavements research and other things for the Air Force. Many of you would not have known that at all, of course. Would have been no reason for you to know. Okay, but we do a lot of work for them, not a little bit. Okay. Got the Navy and the Marine Corps, showed them separately. They view themselves as being the same and separate according to who you talk to. The Navy will say the Marine Corps is part of them, and technically it is. The Marine Corps will say that they are not part of anybody at any given time. Were any of you Marines? Anybody here a Marine? So were you part of anybody? Are you part of anybody now? No. See? There you go. Okay. DITRA's shown here, the Department of State, Interior, the National Science Foundation that does a significant amount of work through CREL, and then the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, which does a lot of work, particularly through GRL. Next slide, please. This is give you an idea of if you just took the top 11 customers and looked at the funding that they provide. This is the breakdown of how they provide their funding. You see that Army is $2.1 billion, so the total funding through 13 through 16 would be somewhere around $4.2 billion. Half of it's from the Army. You see what comes from the Corps of Engineers. We could grow what comes from the Corps of Engineers. The money that we get from direct out of that 374 is probably close to 280 million of it. So our reimbursable work through Corps of Engineer district offices is actually lower than we would probably like for it to be. And then look at the Air Force though, $183 million in a 4-year period from the Air Force. And then you have differing amounts there. All of these come together to be significant amounts of work. And this represents about 2.7 billion, about 2.6 billion of the 4 billion plus that we have in the organization. Next slide. Health of the laboratories, where are we now? Well, the laboratories are fairly healthy. They're working at it at least. What this slide shows, it shows where we were in terms of burdenable work. Now, what that terminology means is that we get work in every year that comes through the laboratories, and the work that comes through the labs are two different kinds, and through the whole organization. One type can be burdened with the overheads, the G&A costs that the ERDC itself has, and then there's a type called exempt that is not burdened with anything. Sometimes we exempt funds because we make business decisions to exempt them. For example, a customer may come in and say, we're basically giving you pass-through funds. We get congressional funds that are, by definition, things that are going to other people. We're not to siphon anything off of those as they go by to someone else. We have something called direct fund sites, which are funds that literally cannot be burdened in any sense of the word. But these burdens are the way that we generate all of the indirect costs that we have, that we cover in the organization. So it covers all of our operating costs. And we basically operate in our organization like a business. We get a very limited amount of money for operations and maintenance related costs in the organization. Okay, just this year, for example, we will go up to somewhere around 70% of funding for the operations and maintenance costs associated with energy for the high performance computing systems that are within our organization. But there have been times when we've had to reclaim that out of the high performance computing modernization program. Okay, so we, for most of our existence, have had to reclaim all of our cost as multipliers over the top of our operations. And we operate very much like a business in that sense. Many Department of Defense laboratories do not do that. The Space Missile and Defense Technical Center that is at Huntsville, Alabama, shows their total multiplier against labor as being 1%. That's for their awards. And that's because their command, the Space Missile Defense Command, pays for everything out of another pot of money. So as taxpayers, you're still paying for everything. It's just that out of their pot of money, they're only paying 1% of it. And out of the command's pot of money, they're paying for everything else. Several of the Army laboratories get more base ops money because they are sitting on installations, and we are not a military installation. None of our 4 locations is a full military installation except for the component that we have of GRL that sits in the COOD building that is connected to Hexa that's part of Fort Belvoir. The other 3 locations that we have are viewed as civil installations. By the way, the next time you hear that somebody's going to brack one of our locations, just smile and walk on, because we're not brackable in that sense. Particularly this location. The Vicksburg location through the years has been said to be ready to be bracked. In the late 70s, it was going to be attacked by missiles because West was so important that the Soviets were going to lob nuclear missiles into Vicksburg. I hope they had some more important targets, to be honest with you. That was during the period when the local school system here was teaching there were 52 states, counting Puerto Rico and Guam. So there's a lot of disinformation in Vicksburg. For those of you that are at the sites, you may not want to get your information from Vicksburg anytime soon. Okay, including this presentation, in fact, come to think of it. So you can see the bars here. The bars represent FY15 numbers, the blue FY16. We grew, when you grow in anything that you can burden, it represents a total growth for that laboratory in the amount of work that it did in that year, and that's a good thing. Okay. GRL had a little bump in this one year. That's an explainable bump. Okay. CREL is doing better. CREL had a very difficult time, and FY15 is moving forward. Actually had a negative balance in their departmental account, rather significant one for FY15, but got most of the way out of it in 1 year, which is a fabulous move for them in a 1 year's time. Next slide. Here are the hiring trends for the organizations, and you can see that our organizations have very different sizes. Now, if you look at one of the things, you look at this top line for the DAO. The DAO is the new name. We have not hired God. For those of you that are wondering, the DAO is the new name for CSD. And the executive office up there, one of the reasons that the number gets as large as it is that the ORT and the combination of the UROC and all of the aspects of that all moved into the executive office in FY15. And so that number shifted out of GSL. That made the numbers larger. But you can see that the organization's about the size of the largest lab, which is GSL. But you can see that CREL, for example, is, GRL is only about half the size. It's about the size of a division with its partnered relationship with the Army Geospatial Center. So what we have is we have krill as really our smallest laboratory. And it's important to have a certain size, and that size is important to us for sure, because that size represents the resource that we have to be able to use and team with across the organization. Okay. Also represents the number of people that we have to provide services to any customer base that we have. So if we get too small, we start to lose out in the ability to provide burdenable capability to a lab. Next slide. Facilities, well, what can I say? Look at this one chart. We've got some facilities that were opened in 1936, went to 1956, which was the year that I was born. You can see that CHL still has 7 of those. There are 9 of those total on the campus here in Vicksburg, so 2 of those belong to someone other than CHL. CHL actually had about 12 of those less than 5 years ago and began the process of tearing them down. So we're working on demolishing what doesn't need to exist and refurbishing what is truly ugly and needs to be revamped. But we still have much work to do. The average age of the facilities in this organization is 41 years. And the recap rate, which is how long it would take to rebuild everything, at the current rate we're getting money, is 127 years. Now, unless you think that's a long time, the recap rate of the Naval Research Laboratory is 667 years. And if you've ever fly into Washington, D.C., I would ask you to look right across the river from Reagan National, and all that stuff that you see right across the river that looks so old is the Naval Research Laboratory, the premier Department of Defense laboratory. Next slide. Okay, things are changing. We have a new Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Army for Research and Technology, Dr. Tom Russell. He is actually acting. My suspicion is he will probably stay. That none of that has been decided. He is the permanent director of the Army Research Laboratory, but he will have new views and new ideas of the way things are done, and we will have to get used to those. He is much more of a basic researcher. We are very much an applied research organization. We're going from war to longer-term science. You can already see that happening. There's a belief inside the Department of Defense science and technology community that we invested ourselves as an entire community in doing relatively short-term 4 or 5 year things over and over and over and over and over to support the warfare activities. And as a result of that, we should be doing things that are investing more in things that will pay off in 20 and 30 years in some cases. So you're going to see a larger emphasis on basic science for sure in the department over the next little bit. Again, we're agile. We'll figure out how to handle that. LRDP is the long-range research and development planning activity, and the POG is the Army instantiation of that. We've had people involved in this all along. Represents a possibility of a realignment of Army science and technology. It will not surprise me at all if up to 20% of the Army's direct science and technology money by FY 17 or 18 is, or say 18 and 19, is realigned in some sense, and we will position ourselves to be able to take advantage of that. Rather than viewing it as something that says, oh my gosh, somebody's going to take everything away from me, we will view it as an opportunity to expand into some new areas that we want to work on. Okay. We can look at the future and be afraid of it, or we can look at the future and say, wow, now somebody has broken up the way things are being done. Now we've got a chance to do some new stuff. There's a possible 10% cut in senior executives. David will lose a foot. I mean, I don't know how the exact 10% business is going to go, but many of you are smiling at the possibility of losing 10% of the senior executives. I think that's kind of crummy for you to do that with them sitting right here. At least avert your eyes, okay? That's just not. Okay. Some of them are actually happy about it too, which is even more wicked, okay, because I think they're thinking about me in this case. Okay. This possible cut was first listed at 25% for the whole Department of Defense, and now appears to have settled down into the possibility of a 10% cut. All of our lab director, all of the science and technology positions that we have in ERDC are well above the cut line. It's very possible that we could still wind up losing one in headquarters. Okay. These next concept are the senior science and technology manager positions. These are new positions that are above GS-15 positions. We actually have 23 of these. These are new for us, and we've filled 8 of them. Okay. They pay up to what senior executives make. If you want one, again, just let me know. First set of people that get to me after this is over will be getting one. Be more than happy to, if somebody wants 2, I'll be happy to give you 2. Just let me know. I'm anticipating a variety of questions coming in now from the internet folks. So you should have been sending your stuff in. And then the 219 program will be going to 4% in FY17 once we get legislation passed. And that's a fair bit of money, folks. That winds up being somewhere around $30 million for us. And so we're going to really have to view that as a major source of opportunity to do some work on facilities and to do some things to invest ourselves in where we want to go. Next slide. Now, we've been working on something called BEST to try to position ourselves. We'll go through what BEST means on the next slide. But the ideas of this started for us in FY16 in earnest, was really to get ourselves to understand what do we need to work on just to get ourselves perched correctly in FY20 so we'll be ready to move out. Now we know that we have some things that need to be done operationally to make ourselves more efficient. Okay. We know that, and at the time we started this, we had a major issue going on with contracting. We just weren't collectively getting much efficiency out of what we were doing from the labs through contracting to get stuff out the door, which affects our overall ability to do what we do in business. And one of the major success stories of what we've done with BEST is we've managed to do a much better job with contracting in FY16, and we'll continue that process in 17 and onward. Okay, we're working manpower in this regard. So let's go to the next slide. This is difficult to read, and I apologize for that. And again, you can get these slides and you can look at these, but we've created a whole set of things in areas such as business sophistication, employee success, superior solutions, strategic communications, and then in technology stratagems, BESST, to be able to position us in 5 areas that will help us to understand how to get ourselves ready for what we need to be doing in FY20 and beyond. Now, these involve a variety of things. In business sophistication, we've set our goal for ourselves to be able to establish 4 new multi-year programs, each one of which is $5 million a year. And the purpose for that is very simple. We want to begin to learn how to market do marketing and business development for ourselves for large reimbursable projects, and $5 million a year is a large reimbursable project for us. Okay, just as an example, in FY16, we had in the vicinity of 820 customers in this organization. We had 2,900 projects. Okay, so we live with a lot of projects that are below $500,000. And the overhead that we have for small projects is remarkably similar to the overhead that we have for large projects in the sense of a lot of the paperwork that we have to do. So our portfolio is leaning heavily as a business organization toward the small project, toward the individual investigator project. We need more in our portfolio that represents the larger project. And so the idea here is let's take advantage of the things that we do well in teaming, and let's establish a way for us to market across our organization so that we take the maximum advantage of all the contacts we have and all the things we could bring to the fight for a particular problem. All right, so let's say that we all saw an opportunity to do work for organization XYZ. Our traditional way to attack that would be this. One lab would go talk to XYZ with its contacts, another lab would go talk to XYZ with its contacts, the third lab would go talk to XYZ with its contacts. The fourth lab would go talk to XYZ, and if you think that that's silly, I can assure you that the idea of 4 labs talking to one organization is very common. Then, if the organization's any good, here's what it's going to do. It's going to start calling each of the labs back saying, this lab can do this for $40 and you said $42. Oh, I can do it for $38. I misadded. By the time we get done with that, we'll actually be doing it with our own money. See what I'm saying? And we'll get it done by tomorrow because we've got this entrepreneurial thing about us, but we've also got this other thing. We don't want a dime to get away from us if we can help it. Okay? Where if, on the other hand, if we got together to begin with and looked at the whole set of things that XYZ needed, we'd be able to put together a combined capability. So what stops us from doing that? Part of it is the fear that one lab is going to take away whatever it is from another lab. Okay? And you've got senior leadership who are absolutely dedicated to the idea that they will fix that problem if it happens. And they do that now. You may not see it, but they do that now. I know they do that now because I send them stuff and ask them to fix it. Okay? But this is a major growth area for our organization in terms of where we're going. Our competitive advantage requires us to team together to be able to outcompete other people. We are never each other's problems. We are the secret sauce to making it possible to outcompete others. There are several things here that I would draw your attention to that you can look at. Lots of stuff. There are several things related to communications. We don't communicate well. You got to know that we don't communicate well. Engineers in general, scientists, I understand, do communicate better than engineers, but the scientists only talk to each other. And so the engineers then are still left, and they're also saying things that the engineers don't understand, so you got to have an interpreter. Okay, I got members of my Sunday school class in here now nodding, going, that's right. Okay, so, you all know the definition of an extroverted engineer, right?
They look at your shoes.
Look at the person's shoes they're talking to instead of looking at their own shoes while they're talking. And so we have got to work on communications. Now here's the deal. If we ask you your opinion, millennials, this is particularly true for you. If we ask you for your opinion, then according to your value system, what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to do exactly what you tell us, right? So we may not actually do that, but for all of you, if we start asking you your opinion, and we don't do anything with it, then you're not going to tell us what you think. I don't blame you. Okay, we've got to have a feedback capability in this organization that provides for that, and we don't completely yet have that at all. We're working it, but we don't have it. We've made more progress in a year than I've seen made in 37. Okay, but we have a lot of progress that needs to be made. Next slide. These are technical areas that we can work. These are certainly not all the technical areas, but these are things that are going to stand out for us over the next several years. Infrastructure R&D is the primary thing that this nation needs in civil works. I hope the nation's going to figure this out regardless of who's in the Congress and who the president is. It's a big deal. The infrastructure's crumbling around us, and we have knowledge of the fact that we are the only people doing meaningful infrastructure-related R&D in this country. We're partnering with everybody that knows how to do this, and they're looking at us to lead this, okay? And they have contributions to make, but we probably have 10 to 20 times the amount of funding that they have, and we don't have nearly enough. A2AD is anti-access aerial denial. We have a lot of work going on in that. We have an enormous amount of capability in that area in a lot of different ways. Much of it very classified. This is not an idea that's going to go away in any sense of the word. It's connected to PACOM and the Pacific Pivot. It's also going to be connected to things that are going on in the EUCOM arena in Europe. So that topic's not going away. That's probably both of those are 10-year topics at least, I would say. ERS is Engineered Resilient Systems. That one has the potential to be a 20-year topic or a no-year topic. We'll see. It's going to be one of the two. Map-based planning, the Arctic. We're probably the best people on this planet to do various aspects of the Arctic. We've got to educate some people about what needs to be done in the Arctic. We're going to have to invest some of our own money to get the Arctic going. Autonomous construction, Searle and GSL both can work that space. Additive manufacturing, several people in that space. We have a niche capability there. And then the dense urban environments and the subterranean world, we've got enormous capability in both of those. Enormous capabilities. Now, here's my point to you. We could write 10 other things up there. Okay, and you can help us discover 5 other topics. We have a certain bandwidth beyond which we can't really reach out to every topic on the planet. I admit that to you. And we have certain of these that are in our wheelhouse and certain of them that aren't among all the topics we could pick. But here's the point. If those topics all change in 2 years, if we keep those characteristics that I mentioned to you at the beginning, we can handle that. And if we lose those characteristics that I talked about at the beginning, it won't matter if we pick these right. The goal is not to be Nostradamus. It's not to pick the future out well. It's to look at the future and look at several possible futures and to say, based on those futures, we can cover about 80% of those with what we know how to do. And for the rest of it, we will partner with really good people to cover it all. That's good leadership. That's what we know how to do. Next slide. A lot of enablers associated with all of these. We've got a lot of high performance computing capability. We need to keep that. We've got a lot of data analytic capability that we need to work. We're growing that. There are a lot of people who will claim that they know how to do data analytic work. A lot of people. We want to sort through who really knows how to do what. We want to grow that area, not buy what's on the shelf today. In the area of marketing and business development, we must grow our capability. I've talked about that a good bit. And we'll make better use of Section 219 funding. I've talked about that. We're going to look at whether we have things that people want to work with us on to commercialize. That'll just expand our horizons. What would be really lovely would be to see some people build outside of our fence lines a little more than they have, to build some businesses. An example here in this location that I happen to know is of the roughly $600 million, $500 million that ERDC outsourced in FY15, $42 million of that went to anybody that was connected to anything in the state of Mississippi. Most of that went to schools. So we're in one of the poorest states in the United States, and nobody's competing for any of the stuff that we outsource, in essence. And for the local folks here in this room, it might not surprise you to know that it's very difficult to get the economic folks in this part of the world to understand what we even do. Of course, sometimes it's difficult for us to get. I mean, did you ever go home and try to explain to anybody at your house what we do? And finally, I've mentioned this, but we've got to have these enterprise vehicles to surge manpower. That's just got to be a priority for us to have. We don't have that. When we see an opportunity that requires us to have more people or more capability than we own, we can't move fast enough. Next slide. Okay, that took a while to say, but it leaves us with at least 30 minutes, I think, for some questions.
Yes, sir.
And I appreciate your time. Thank you for it.
Again, if you'd like to participate, please text your questions to 601-456-0421. You can also email your questions to erdic-cco@usace.army.mil. We had about 30 resumes come in for the SSTM positions.
How many did you send?
Just one.
Yeah, sure.
And a backup. There are a lot of positions such as SSTMs, DB6s, and STs. How can researchers, DB4s and DB2s, better align for those types of positions?
So, in order to be able to answer that, I've got to probably tell you that before you can begin to talk to that, we've got to get you aligned to DB5 jobs. So all of those jobs all of those positions that question asks about presuppose that the person is an extremely viable DB5/GS15 level individual. Okay, and that they have the capability to meet all of the characteristics that are required to be a GS15 DB5 in our organization. That they are able to command opportunities for work, that they are published, that they are recognized in the organization, that they're recognized nationally and internationally. We actually have a pretty good understanding inside each of the laboratories of what that means. So that's a start. So for the DB2s and DB4s, they would need to begin there, and we could explain, and their branch chiefs or division chiefs would be able to explain how then these other jobs are umbrellas even above the DB5 jobs.
Next question is, what is ERDC known for now, and what will it be known for in the future?
So ERDC is known for a series of things now. And I'll answer two different ways. It is known now for doing things that are akin to force protection, force projection. It's known for the geospatial research and engineering capabilities we have. It's certainly known for the civil works capabilities that we produce. It's known for the environmental quality and installation work that we do. If you follow down the business areas that the ERDC has, you can pretty much decipher what it is that ERDC is known for and the communities that know us. We're known in multiple areas of the Pentagon by multiple sponsors. We're known in multiple COCOMs and have been for a period of time. CENTCOM knows us everywhere. PACOM knows us well. EUCOM knows us well. NORTHCOM knows us very well. Now, the other things that we're known for, we're known not only for the work that we do, but we're known for the way that we do it. We're known for the passion that we bring to the work we do. There's no time when people come and visit us when they don't comment on the passion we bring to the work. They love that. We're occasionally known for being slow, but we're never known for being non-responsive. And if there's ever a time when we're suggested that it's non-responsive, it's usually a communications issue.
You mentioned some of our top customers. Who are some other customers that we should engage with? And additionally, who are some people that we should partner and collaborate with?
So that question's almost too broad for me to be able to answer by myself. That takes a community to be able to answer that. Let me tell you that we're working hard within our technical directors, within the lab directors, within the business development office, to actually understand and publish that to the organization. Who are the people that we want to reach out to that perhaps we haven't before? So I could give you a whole set of ideas about that someone might take as the gospel. The problem with doing that is it sounds like direction, and I don't want to do that. We reach to most of the defense organizations very well now that we believe have a need for our requirements. There are one of the obvious groups that we need to reach to better than we have, or let's say we need to enhance our reach, is to reach to the Corps of Engineers better. We're part of that organization. We have not reached well to the Corps of Engineers in over a decade. So we've got work to do there. But rather than, I'd like to table that question and say that we owe an answer as an organization, as the leadership of the organization, to not only who we need to go be talking to, but how. How do we approach them?
Next question. Lab-to-lab collaborations can be very challenging. Are there any strategic efforts to encourage cross-lab collaboration?
So there are a variety of them. Dr. Nikki Gerger, who's our head of business development, has a group that she calls her BDAG that meets on a routine basis that works on business development related issues. And if the poser of that question is not aware of who the person is from his or her laboratory who's involved in that, then we need to make sure that that information is published so that everybody's aware of who those members are. We need to make sure that everybody knows, that the lab directors know, for example. That'd even be good information. So that is strategic in and of itself, to make sure that the technical directors are making sure that business development opportunities are, that folks are made aware of those. We have some changes being made to some of those types of functions with the technical directors. Not so much changes, but expectations we perhaps have always had, that we've had different levels of functional requirements for our technical directors based on not only their skill sets, but across different labs. As a function of, are they involved in reimbursable work? Do they mostly manage direct work? Some of that is coming to more common fruition across the organizations. But the answer to that is yes, and the fact that the question is asked, again, gets back to communication, that we've not done a good job of communicating that. So we'll do better.
Next question. Will ERDC share the manpower analysis results? It would be meaningful to the teams across the ERDC to get external insight into our organization.
So we'll certainly share that information. Let's see, how can I say this? So I have, in the not so distant past, I've basically been told that the idea of reading an email from me is something that most of you won't do. It's been suggested to me that you own rules that you write that says if executive office or if Holland, then delete. Could I see a show of hands of how many of you actually have those rules who are not on the front row? Don't you do it. I know you'll raise your hand. Okay, so I don't know how to get you an email and how to get you a manpower analysis out in 140 characters. I mean, that's like 27,942,811 tweets. Okay, so you'll have to sort of suggest how you might even want to see it. We've got, first off, we have a manpower study that was done of the ERDC that is in the process of being approved right now in our headquarters. And it's a very positive manpower analysis if it comes across the way the draft was presented. It says we're doing a lot of extraordinarily meaningful work and we might actually need more people to help us. So some of you might be doing the work of 2 people. Some of you might be doing the work of a half a person. Okay, you might be like my old boss who wrote at the end of a resume, end of a reference letter, in closing, let me say that you'll be lucky if you can get this man to work for you. Which is honestly the truth. He really did write that. We took it back to him 6 times and said, you don't want to write this. And he said, oh, I know what I want to write. I was going to Alabama before you were born, which was not true. He went to Auburn, but he couldn't remember. He went to Alabama Polytech, which was Auburn's name in 1956. Okay, so we'll be more than happy to share that type of information. Once we share it, if you come running toward my office, we may not share this until March the 3rd. I'm retiring on March the 2nd. Then if you come running toward my office screaming, don't send us this crap, then we won't know what to do. So you just don't use the delete button all the time because some of this stuff might actually be useful to some of you. Okay. We've got more in manpower. We've got the targets that the laboratories and the DAO basically have for the year to hire and the types of hires that they're supposed to do. All this kind of stuff can be put up on the internet or on web locations. You can go look if you want to. Then you won't feel the least bit condemned by the idea that you cluttered up your trash basket with the stuff. Okay. But we've got a lot of information. As soon as we have it confirmed, we'll put that information out.
Next question. Last year, a lot of our SESs and technical experts were consumed by the LERDP. What was the LERDP and what is the impact to the organization?
So we don't know what the LERDP, again, was the Long Range Research and Development Planning process that was done at the DoD, OSD level across the services, and then later done just for ground combat. We had 3 of our senior executives who were directly involved in leading 3 of the 5 teams associated with it. Several of our technical directors involved all the time in it as well. Dr. Davis is still engaged in it even now. And it's all going to have to come to a head fairly soon, if for no other reason than the people that have been leading it, by their very definition, will be gone in January, right? So no matter who's elected, the people that are sitting at the very highest of positions normally don't get the opportunity to carry over from administration to administration. ground combat related plans that were created, in particular, cover a number of things that are very much in our wheelhouse. They're things that we do. Those are not by design and are not directly correlated with the fact that we had people leading them. They're connected to the fact that the Army owns, and the Marines for that matter, own those requirements. Okay, but I will say this, the need to have a longer range aspect to all of this, I believe, is going to trump all of these requirements and push us into a position where some component of the program, and I would say the upper level of that is 20%, but some component of the Army Science and Technology program is going to wind up being reworked. It's not going to be a bunch of new money, it's going to be a realignment of the existing money. And with that realignment comes both the worry of how it impacts our existing program, more than likely starting in 18 or even in 19, and the opportunity for us to jump in and say, we own these skill sets and we can do these things. And our POM presentation, which is how the military side does its planning, will be for the FY 19 through 23 period. We have that briefing to do in a couple of weeks. And we're counting on making presentations that show that if such an eventuality occurred, that we're very prepared to move into some new areas that are of importance to the Army. We're going to take care of that. That's what you should expect us to do.
Sir, often we develop amazing technologies that are simply shelved. How can we do a better job of the last piece of the puzzle to ensure our R&D truly makes an impact and gets transitioned?
So the question of technology transfer is an age-old problem. We probably do as well as anybody in the Army does at trying to create technology transition agreements to hand our military technology off to people who will then commit to funding it and integrating it into their systems in some way, shape, or form. On the civil side, we've actually begun to work even much harder with the idea of how do we work these things into the business processes of the Corps of Engineers so that we're not throwing it over the transom and telling people later on, we can use it for you so that you can figure out how to use it. We've also, as part of the work that the area that Rhonda Taylor leads, is we've invested our own money into greater and greater areas of aspects of technology transfer. We've started this thing called ERDC University, where we're bringing Corps of Engineer people in to be with us for at least 6 months at a time. They're learning how to use our tech base, and then they go back home, and when they go back home, they carry that knowledge with them. Now, the way that we did that in the past is that we worked on their projects, and they worked on them with us, and we had so many projects that technology happened all the time for the Corps of Engineers. And as that number of projects reduced, then we had more and more difficulty transitioning that work. And as the Corps began to do a little less in-house work, or in some cases a significantly lessened amount of in-house work, we either wound up doing that work, but not necessarily with them, but actually doing it for them, which was good for us financially, but was not good from the standpoint of transitioning technology. Or the work went to contractors. There were also several cases where other components of the Corps of Engineers began to transition their technology instead of us. Corps Water Management System, for example, out of the Hydrologic Engineering Center, part of the Institute for Water Resources, is the standard way that hydrologic analyses are done, not the way that the Coastal Hydraulics Lab capabilities are done. The coastal capabilities come out of ERDC, but not the inland capabilities. So we still have more technology transfer work to do to work those types of issues out. And those challenges have been in existence for several years.
I don't know what that is, but we'll continue. You mentioned several times in your presentation about agility. What are some examples of our agility?
A good example for me, because I'm right in the middle of it, is what we've done in the engineered resilient systems area. So this area is designed to take advantage of the use of all of our high performance computing capability, our advanced modeling capability, the ability to do trade space analyses, and to combine them all together to support acquisition. So 3 years ago, we started into this support area for acquisition, not completely blind, but with a limited understanding of how we would do this business. What we did understand is we understood modeling, we understood computing, we understood that a variety of our models out of the CREATE program, which is part of the HPC modernization program, were being used to support acquisition. And we started going to meetings. And we went to meetings, and we went to meetings, and we went to meetings. And what we began to find out was that our ability to integrate those modeling capabilities with trade space capabilities and to build those integration bridges between those capabilities, our understanding of the machines, our understanding of how to model those with real environmental effects in real places in the world, and then to analyze those data, big data that they are, and bring those problems in front of people in ways they could understand, that we did that well. Okay. That agility was to be able to, in essence, be working on the battlefield someplace on something completely different, to pick up our troops, cut and run, and go attack in a completely different place in a relatively short period of time was a real plus for us. And that work now has become our 5th business area. And that work has gone from nothing to $30 million a year in 3 years. Okay, that's a major plus. Now, the downside to that in terms of agility is that our ability to hire up the specialized people that we needed to support that capability has been a challenge that Dr. Mosier and I have spent a fair bit of time working on. Trying to find all those people and bring them into government service is tough. And if we had had other vehicles that we could have played rather quickly, then it would, I mean, we would have utilized those as well as government service to build the in-house capability and augment that capability with some specialized folks who might not choose to come to work in government service. Okay? So there's 2 sides of the agile question right there. But clearly that problem, that opportunity was an opportunity that had a time to market issue to it. It had a time stamp on it. We were either going to hit it over a 1 or 2 year period or not ever hit it at all. And in fact, you know, I was sitting in the room when they said we're either going to keep this, the OSD level leadership said we're either going to keep this area or we're going to kill it here today. Does anybody want to stand up and say that this is worth keeping? And I stupidly went, I think we should keep it. And they said, fine, you're in charge of it. Yeah, you. Okay. We, by the grace of God or dumb luck or serendipity, we built something out of it. Okay. That's why you have to be able to move rather quickly on these. One of our external reviewers, Mark Lister, says all the time to market is everything. A lot of people have great ideas. You have to move quickly with your ideas.
Where do you see ERDC future partnerships with private industry? Examples, Google, Amazon, etc.
So we actually own relationships. They're not future partnerships. We own current partnerships with Google and with Amazon. We just don't seem to tell ourselves about them very often. We had such a good relationship with Google for bringing the Google search appliance into behind a government firewall. On the IT side of the house, that we were really one of the first people to ever do that type of work with them and for them. For Amazon, we're working with Amazon on can we create a government cloud or a private cloud environment with the Amazon folks that would allow us to bring defense industry people in with our own folks to connect up the data-to-data exchange environments that we need so that we can have a swap space that is a completely acceptable, information-assured environment that we need for engineered resilient systems, and for that matter, for several other types of capabilities that we need with industry. So we're already doing this stuff. You're already doing this stuff. You're doing this all the time. You don't know it. You're doing it in your sleep. Congratulations. Where do I see it going? I see you doing all kinds of stuff. Be sure and send me a note while I'm sitting at home getting my golf clubs ready to go to the golf course. Okay? You're already doing this. I just can't stress that enough. And doing this with the biggies, okay, doing it with the biggest and brightest and best on the planet is exactly what needs to happen, because we're not a little bitty fish in a little bitty pond. We're a great big bunch of people in a great big pond doing meaningful work. Last question.
What do you see as ERDC's role in developing future scientists and engineers, elementary school and on up? Are there areas we can grow/dedicate more resources?
So we would actually have more resources dedicated to working in K through 12 right now if we had any choice about it at all. When we had more funding and more opportunity to work in K through 12, we were connecting with and influencing on the order of 12,000 K through 12 students a year across the ERDC. And then some of the DoD money went away and a little bit of the Army money went away, and that all fell back to the idea of, some of it fell back to volunteerism, which we continue to do very well. But this organization has an enormous commitment to education and always has. I mean, we have 150, I guess, adjunct professors in the organization. The organization clearly loves the idea of teaching and mentoring. And if we had more funds, and I think this will come back, as we get more funding, we will continue to apply more of that. We don't have the luxury, unfortunately, or the authorities to apply any more funds to this area than those that Army gives us right now, which are less than we did have. Okay, but we're prepared through the Human Capital Office with the people that we have to gear that back up immediately if we have the opportunity. Okay. Again, I just want to thank you for the chance to talk to you today. It's always fun when you get a chance to stand up here and be a blowhard for this time period. Honestly, it's a pleasure, it's a privilege to get to be the director of this organization. I mean that with all my heart. It truly is. You just cannot imagine what a privilege it is. Thank you for the time. Have a good day.